for me, coding has always been the toll that I've had to pay. I've figured out how to do it, and I enjoy doing it, by the way, but I've figured out how to do it because I have things I want to make. And it's the things that I want to make that are who I am.
Welcome to Chatbots, where tech meets the love, where CTOs share the tales and the comments of startups, new big names, innovations unfold. How many CTOs will share their stories untold?
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast. I'm Brad Hefta-Gaub, and my co-host is
Scott Porad.
And today we have a very, very special guest. I don't even know. I can't even dare to introduce him. Justin Kaufman, you and I and Scott all work together. But why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
I don't know, really the only important thing that I have to say is I reported to both of you back to back. And if we don't at some point in this conversation do a heads up comparison of who was the better manager, I
we
feel
should
like, what are
definitely
we
do that.
even doing here, right?
We
A
should
stack rank of
definitely-
some sort, right? There's two people.
Yeah.
So is that one of the 13 items on your list that you wanted to talk about?
You want me to? There's only 5 items because I only spent about 10 minutes on my list. You want to hear the items?
Well, before I do want to hear them, but I want to say to our listening audience that Justin is the first person to come on this podcast with a prepared list of things they wanted to talk about.
Take it seriously, you guys. I wish I could just show it to you. Is it something that can I share my screen?
You can share your screen. I
I'll
don't
just
think
share
that
a
it'll-
window.
It won't show up in the ultimately in the audio podcast, but
Well, but you guys are always doing video, so this
Yeah.
is my list. The best one maybe is the first one though, because I don't know if you guys are making bank on this or not, but
we have actual revenue. Yes, we have a Patreon subscriber.
incredible. Well,
So-
let's multiply that, you guys. Let's start marketing the drinking game version, and we can add rules. The other ideas on here that I'm particularly fond of are the do dump marry question. I do feel like we can do like a viral meme right there with AI models. It hasn't really been done yet.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of you guys. I'm thinking of like 6-second viral tech clips because that a huge market for the tech clips out there.
There is. And if we would just figure out how to actually like use our social medias to broadcast some of these things other than just posting them on LinkedIn, then we might have something.
It reaches me. Reaches me.
First of all, love chatting with you, Justin, because you're always such a funny guy and you know how to bring the heat when it comes to like just making things interesting. I honestly think that people would be interested to hear a little bit about what you're working on nowadays, because I think that like a bunch of your little topics here are about AI, like obviously AI assisted coding, AI, how we can use these large language models for actual business purposes. And, I don't want you to necessarily reveal too much about what you're working on. Feel free to tell us as much as you want to. But I know this is an area that you have spent a lot of time on and you're particularly interested in and you're particularly, I believe, quite bullish on. And so to me, that seems like where we should start a little bit.
Well, this is very interesting, Brad, because where I left off in the Justin story, he was working at a chicken restaurant.
He was working at a chicken shack. That's true. That's true. So Justin, give us a
let's
quick
give us a little
timeline.
bit of an update here.
The three of us worked together in health tech, and then what happened?
I went Unabomber and I was like, I'm gonna move to a chicken shack in the woods, and I'm gonna shuck and sell chicken out of that little hut. And the reality is, the co-founder of the company that we all worked for a time, and CEO Robbie left 98.6, and it was right around the time when I was starting to feel like it might be a good time for a change or to try something new. And so I was looking and I wasn't finding the next step. And I called Robbie. I mean, it was a weird call to make. I really hadn't spoken to Robbie at 98.6, but I was curious what he was up to. And no, actually, I remember why I called him. I called him because he left the week before it was supposed to be my first skip level one-on-one with Robbie. It was actually like a triple skip level. Somehow I achieved like the most number of skips you could do all the way up to the top. And I was actually excited because I was like, this is a chance to really like get in with the CEO. It's going to be great. And then he leaves and he's gone. And I was like, the real insult here is to me, not to him. Like I got cheated out of my one-on-one, and so I called him, and I was like, I'd still like to have this one-on-one with you. And so we talked, and I asked him what he was up to. He said, I'm starting a restaurant, and I have, as you know, as you both know, I'm a man of many ideas, many bad ideas, but also maybe sometimes an interesting one. And of all of my like topics for ideas, the restaurant topic is one of the biggest. Like it's hard for my wife to go out to dinner with me because like the entire dinner conversation is just like, well, if they just introduced a Bluetooth sensor at the hostess table, like they could probably make this more efficient. So it takes a lot of the romance out of dates. But at the same time, I have all these ideas for how the restaurant thing could be, I think, modified in a positive way, in a more human way, actually, to make people feel less like strangers when they come back to a restaurant. And so when Robbie told me that he was starting a restaurant, I just said, "Me too. We're doing it together." And he was like, "Well, I don't need a software engineer to for there's no role in the kitchen for that kind of work." And I just honestly, I think he would agree. I just wore him down. Like I kept messaging him ideas, and I was like, "This is what we're going to do, and this is why we're going to build this." And eventually, he's got a tech background, obviously, so I think I had a better chance getting in with him than I did with perhaps a pure restaurateur. But eventually said yes, and that led to yeah, just building all kinds of interesting things that you can still try. It's all still there in the Mount Joy restaurants if you're ever in Capitol Hill or South Lake Union.
Yeah, and a big piece of what that was all about, right? If I recall correctly, I went and enjoyed some Mount Joy a couple times, and it was about kind of like this notion of uh, personalization and engagement and sort of kind of hu- trying to use tech in a humanizing way that then made the restaurant experience more humanizing. That's what I felt like it was. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I had fed you some lines to read about what we were building, and those were the lines that came out, that would have been perfect. So you just improv that. Uh, that's exactly what it is. And for me, I think like I'm a lazy person. I go back to the same restaurants over and over and I always order the same thing. I'm just a creature of habit to a fault. And in all the places I've lived, at all the restaurants that I've picked to be that place that I'm going to go grab lunch at, I'm always struck by the fact that when I walk in, um, the same question gets asked. It's have you been here before? And like I was there like an hour ago. I'm still hungry. I'm coming back for more. It's like you are. It's like you're just getting read a script. And so I felt like there's lots of cool ways that we can change that narrative for restaurants and for hospitality, maybe in general. And so I'm glad that that was sort of your takeaway from your experience because that's what it's all about.
Cool.
So you exited the chicken shack, and then what?
Well, not exactly. So, um, as part of the restaurant thing, I ended up building out a new platform. Whole different story as to why we didn't use Toast and build on top of that or Square or any of those existing POS platforms. But the short of it is there's a lot of customized things that I wanted to do, and it was not possible to extend any of these sort of out of the box platforms. And so wound up really built like everything at Mount Joy is 100% homegrown. There's no like we're not using any vendors for our technology, um, which like by the way, do not recommend. That my advice to other people is not to do that. However, if you make that mistake and you do that, and you stick with it long enough that you work out the problems that are inherent in that approach, um, there are incredible. benefits and synergies that you get, and there's no other way to get them. Like in a minute, I'll explain to you where the messaging platform that I'm working on today comes into this, but that whole thing is integrated 100% into every aspect of the POS, into the kitchen system in the back. It's a synergy like I just haven't witnessed really before, because it's not usually the way people build things. So anyway, um, built this platform for the restaurant, and it took, like, I would say 6 to 8 months before just the basic point of sale aspect of it worked well. I could tell you some real horror stories about how it didn't work along the way, and having having chefs behind me yelling, "When are the tickets going to print?" It was like an episode of The Bear. It was really quite traumatic as a software engineer, but eventually it started to work, and then I got the chance to start experimenting and doing the stuff that was really the reason I got into this business. And the first the first thing that I tried was elaborating on the text message. Like at Mount Joy, you get a text after you place an order. It tells you about how long we think it's going to take, and then you get another one when it's ready to come pick it up, right? And I always sort of felt like that period of time is just empty space as far as hospitality. Like waiting time at any place, I don't care if it's like a dentist's office or a restaurant, is just completely taken for granted, and certainly not taken advantage of by the company. Um,
I'd like to note that Justin referred to the dentist office as
As
hospitality.
hospitality.
It is.
Yes.
Well,
But
it's fun. My definition of hospitality has definitely broadened since I've started this venture. But I really do. I see all of these places as opportunities to serve people, and largely opportunities that we don't really do a good job serving people.
so you're waiting for your
So you're
sandwich.
waiting for your sandwich, and I thought maybe people would be interested in having a conversation with us during that period of time. And so I started with a small thing. Actually, I somehow hooked into to our speaker system where we play music at the restaurant, and I figured I'll see if people want to make song requests. Like, it's always more fun to be at a place when it's your kind of jam going on, right? And everyone did it. Like, as soon as they got their text telling them that they could do it, people did it. And it was, I don't remember if this was always part of I'd love to say it was always part of the plan, or if it just occurred to me after the fact. But there was this beautiful thing about that feature, that now I know what kind of music this person likes. The next time they walk in the door, they don't need to ask for it. We can just start putting on the music that they enjoy. And so it was like this magical thing where, like, my goal was to make people not feel like strangers the second time they come to our place. And like this accomplished that so easily, and people noticed it. Like, they were like, people would, like, the messages early on from people were just number one, they were like uh, shocked and delighted, and incredibly complimentary of what they were seeing. And the other thing I would say about it, it was sort of sad that that was the bar. Like, it was so easy. Like, you don't even need a messaging system to accomplish that. Like, you could just write down, like, if you have someone coming in all the time. So anyways, that's not something that I had seen done, and it's not something apparently anybody who came to our restaurant has ever seen done. And so that was the first little bite of the apple there. And then it sort of evolved with anything else I could think of. One of the nice things about being a tech organization and product organization combined of one person is I can try everything. Like, I don't have much standing in my way in the way of friction, and so I did.
Right about this same time that you were doing all this experimentation with personalization, and you'd kind of found this magical moment of just the fact that just knowing the person's favorite songs gave them this sense of connection to the hospitality that you guys were providing. Right about that same time, that's kind of when the LLM boom started to really happen. And I have to imagine that that was a nice serendipity.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, well, as you probably know about me, I'm the earliest of the early adopters. And in fact, I had actually been using GPT. I think it was GPT 2 when we were all at 98.6, and I confirmed it like a couple months ago because I was just curious. There's still a message in the data science channel where I'm pitching as a non-data scientist, of course. We should use GPT-2, and I like have a whole demo of how it could work. And so I've been following this stuff for a while, and but it definitely became better obviously over the last couple of years. And so it occurs to me, like, I have this messaging platform. Why would I ever even send a single canned transactional text, period? And so once that sort of light bulb went off, uh, everything about the conversation changed. In fact, if you go to Mount Joy today and place an order, uh, your text with Mount Joy doesn't look like a text thread with a company. It looks like a text that you're having with, I wouldn't call it like a friend, but it's somewhere between a person you know and a company instead. And so every message is personalized, and it uses the entire conversation history to inform how it acts and what it does. And there's all these cool things you can do with that. Like we ask people, for example, how they liked the food at the end of their meal, like how their experience was, which by the way is how we are able to get more positive Google reviews, which is very important for restaurants because our LLM can rank and determine what the likelihood of this person giving us positive feedback is, and then we send them a link. But beyond that, there's just all this information besides the music and their feedback that we're getting on a regular basis from people who are just talking because they're waiting uh, with us. And we operationalize that. Like somebody will say after one meal, I loved the chipotle lime sauce with the fries. That was so amazing. So the next time they come, we'll give them a free a sampler of sauce on top of their order, just so that they can try the other ones, and stuff like that. And there's all these surprises that get baked into the experience because we have this conversation that extends over the lifespan of the customer history. So the LLM is the only way that's possible. Being able to take all this loose text content and actually understand what you can do with it. Until these modern APIs became available, you could not. It was not possible to do what we're doing.
Yeah. So I think that one of the things that's pretty cool about this story, Justin, and I think it's useful to kind of unpack this, is that you you're really, like you said earlier a few minutes ago, you kind of said like one of the reasons you've been able to move as fast as you have is because essentially you're a small team. I don't know how big your team is at this point. I don't know if it's just you or if you've got a couple other folks on the team as well. But you're small and you sort of like unencumbered by tech debt, unencumbered by process maybe. So tell us a little bit about that, like, you know, a small dev team, what's that experience like? And maybe contrast it to where you and Scott and I worked together most recently, which was health tech company with hundreds of engineers and lots of process and bureaucracy behind it.
Well, I think you guys both knew at the time that I was frustrated at 98.6 often. And I wouldn't say that this was a pervasive feeling there necessarily, but given my sensibilities, I often felt like, why aren't things changing? Like why isn't the ball apparently moving? And so I think the thing that I've learned over the past several years since then is the bigger the team gets, the slower you're going to go, and there's nothing you can do to change that. That's just human dynamics. And you asked if the team is small or just me, and the truth is the team is just me. Like you don't have a budget for a second technology person in the restaurant business, and so yeah, you barely have a budget for the one. And so the reality is, it's just been me, and that has been as fast, I think, as you can get. Now, the interesting thing for me along this story is when we started, there were, it hadn't been like this was before ChatGPT was released. Okay. And so While there was some stuff out there, it had not become mainstream, and coding tools certainly, like there was Copilot that could sort of help you auto-complete some of your, enum switch statements and stuff like that. But you didn't have AI writing code, right? And it it wasn't that fast. Like it took a while to write some of this stuff. I remember I was writing our like iOS and Android guest ordering apps right up until the day that we opened, and uh, it didn't work that great for that reason. And so fast forward to the release of ChatGPT, and then fast forward a little bit farther to a tool like Claude Code, which I now use pretty much every day. Uh, this is a true story. It just happened over the past week. We've had iOS and Android guest ordering apps since the restaurant started, and we've had an iOS based staff app platform. I always wanted like the staff, whether you're working at the restaurant on a tablet or you're at home and you have your phone, I wanted people to be able to have the entire restaurant at their fingertips, like in their pocket. And so I built that on iOS, but I'm not as fast of an Android developer, and I don't particularly enjoy it as much, just because it's not what I'm used to. And so I never got around to doing it. And at some point in time, like the person who needed it most ended up being someone who was never going to switch off of Android. So this guy Antonio, who's the president of Mount Joy, has for the last 7 to 8 months been operating, needing to go into the restaurant onto one of our tablets to access our data, which is crazy. And I know you're probably thinking, why didn't you just build a web thing? I'm gonna push that question aside and answer the question that I wanted to answer, which is, what did I do to get that Android thing off the ground? Last week, I put Claude Code on the job of taking the iOS app and creating the Android variant, and it took 2 days, and it's done,
Nice.
and it's out. And so
Wait,
when
it took you 2 days or it took Claude 2 days?
it took the two of us 2 days.
Gotcha. The two of us.
Yeah, well, it's
Just the
interesting.
two of us.
It's interesting because it
We
is the
can
two.
make it if we try.
It is the two, though. Like,
Yeah.
I've heard some of your guys' clips from this podcast, and people come on and talk about AI with the whole range of opinions, right? Like on how good it is, and often I hear people say, well, it doesn't get it all right. Like you need a human to moderate. And my hot take on AI is that it's quite a bit better than any of the devs who are talking about how it's not quite that good. Um, the challenge today is in how you're using it. Um, when I say I was able to get Claude Code to transform the code base into Android in 2 days, I think that's actually where my background in writing native mobile apps was helpful, because it's an incredible technical coder. It can come in on like a cute section of your code base and just do things probably better than you. That's my opinion, but it will struggle to do something like a big task, like let's refactor an entire code base without the right direction, and it doesn't get everything right. And so it would have taken 2 weeks. It could have taken forever had I not had some background in what I was trying to have it help me do. And so I think it's we were talking about velocity, and the bottom line is now I go faster than I think I thought ever possible, and it's scary.
I think there's something interesting about your situation with relationship to Claude. You've been the only engineer working on your app. So when it went to go make an Android version from your iOS version, it was kind of probably a pretty consistent set of patterns within your app. Versus if you and I and Brad were all working on it, we would try to align and follow the same patterns, but I'm sure we'd all do stuff differently, right? You asked, I saw in your questions earlier, you asked about tabs or spaces. I mean, that's a little pedantic example, but like, I wonder if the AI was able to be especially effective in a world where only one person wrote the source because it was able to interpret that more easily.
It's an interesting question.
Here's the other thing I wondered. Oh, totally different than AI. This comes back to Mount Joy, which is not only were you kind of a truly full stack team, what you were doing, well, maybe I could be wrong. It seems like Mount Joy actually makes its money doing something else, which is selling chicken sandwiches or other types of food products. I'm not sure of the whole menu. I've never been to a Mount Joy, but maybe I'll go today, as a matter of fact. And I wonder if having the technology be in a, in addition to the core business, actually gives you, in addition to being a solo person, gives you some freedom to experiment, maybe in ways that if it was the business, if it was the core, companies feel more apprehensive about that experimentation because the consequences are different. If the music experiment didn't work, the consequences were very low, right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it existed in the kind of silo that maybe I've depicted it as
Okay.
being in, or the way that you're framing it exactly. Certainly not at first. Like
Yeah.
the way the restaurant evolved, like all the founders, myself included, we were all working pretty closely together, and
It was deep
we had a
integrated.
it was and yeah, I think the things that I owned really were product, non-food product, and tech.
Hmm.
And as time went on, it did, and the team changed. It did sort of evolve into more of an isolated thing. But just to give you an example, um, one of the things that really moved the ball in a big way with this platform, maybe in the biggest way, was our marketing team was frustrated at our lack of ability to get email addresses on our website. Most people just don't go to a restaurant website, and if they do go, they're there for one reason, and it has nothing to do with giving you an email address. And
What's the reason?
Checking your menu.
I was going to go a different direction with it, but I think you're right, Brad. That is the answer. The truth is, personally, I hate giving my email address ever, um, in any circumstance, and I was very protective of all of the sort of levers that I had control of. Um, in terms of like asking people for it. I resisted the entire way from the very beginning, asking for an email address at checkout.
Hmm.
Even an optional one where you can not check the box and not put in your email. Just because I hate that experience, and I feel like ordering food should be about ordering food. It shouldn't be about like ordering food and opting into marketing. So, anyways, the just this is an example of how we were able to move fast, but how we were actually a very integrated unit. Uh, Robbie was like, "You need to sit down with Carrie." Carrie was the person helping us with marketing at the time. She was like, "You guys got to sit down and just figure this out because like marketing's frustrated that they can't talk to people, and you're obviously gatekeeping quite a bit." In the name of a good cause, in the name of a good consumer experience. But even so, there's more to running a business than the customer experience. And so we met, and that led to this idea, which has gone big, I guess you would say, of a game. One thing I had been thinking about doing anyways, as my next sort of like random idea, was putting a leaderboard on the screen at the restaurant.
Hmm.
Like unlike 98.6 or really any other kind of business, a restaurant's like this incredible thing that exists in a neighborhood, in a community. It's a physical space. There are very few examples of businesses these days where people willingly come in and even stay to experience your product. Like that's part of the thing. And so I was always looking for an opportunity to try to like build a community around that place, make people feel like they're part of something more than just a discrete transaction, eat and leave. Not to mention, one of the challenges restaurants have is you come in and you eat, and then you're not interacting with the restaurant again for another month. So all that time in between, there's no touch points, the brand is not on their mind at all, etc. So I had this thought I would do a leaderboard with a game, and the leaderboard would be on our TV screens. When you walk past, Mount Joy and Capitol Hill, our garage is open, and you can see the screen from the sidewalk. And so I was like, if I just put like an arcade style leaderboard where it says the top players, uh, I'm not even going to explain it beyond that. It's just going to be that people are going to come in and they're going to be curious because people like a game and they're competitive, and if it says neighborhood leaderboard on it, they're going to be like, well, I live in this neighborhood. Why am I not on the leaderboard? And This was another, this was another dart that I threw. And by the way, there were a lot of darts I threw that did not hit. I'm just not talking about those ones because I want to paint myself in the best possible light on your podcast. Um, but this dart did land right in the middle, and we put this up. And the reason I pitched this in the context of the marketing meeting with Carrie was because I said, after they play this game that we're going to do by text, because that's what we're going to do everything by, that's our app, we'll ask them for their email address if they want to put their name on the leaderboard. And we'll actually incentivize them to do it because they'll be able to use their score as a discount at the store. And better yet, if they make it to first place, they can eat for free as long as they maintain first place.
Wow.
So again, these synergies that you can do, because the point of sale is my platform and it is completely in the same code base as the messaging stack, can do anything, right? And so all these synergies existed. We built this system, and I think a week later, launched the game. And you guys should try it sometime. It's a word riddle that I write every single day. I've been doing it now for about 370 days. So one riddle each day, and it goes out in the morning to people who subscribe. So every morning we send out about 4,000 right now text messages containing this game, and people play it. And so starting around 8 a.m., if I look at like the messaging sort of dashboard, it just starts going absolutely berserk. And all those people have given their email address. And what's even better about it is the aftermath of the game. After you solve it, I write like a crazy rant, sort of like what I'm saying, like the words that are coming out of my mouth right now. Just like pick a random topic, and that's what I write a paragraph about, and that goes out in the post-solve blurb via text. So people get this blurb, and then they respond to it and have a conversation about it by text, and we learn more about them. Like the other day, I did a puzzle where the answer was interstates, like interstate highways, and I listed some of the interstates that I've spent the most time, sitting in traffic on, and everyone wrote back, and we know like everyone's interstates where they travel. And now when they come back, that's part of the conversation that we can give them, and part of the customization that we can give them in the restaurant. And so uh, for me, the email address was like, how do I check this box so that like everyone's happy? But it turned out we don't use email address at all. Like, I think we still might even ask for it as like a relic of that original idea, but we are having actual conversations 24/7 with thousands of people, and some of them aren't even customers yet. They just see the thing from the sidewalk, and then they become customers because our bot gets them over time. So it's been crazy, yeah.
It's so interesting to think about, and obviously this has sort of been this is not going to be a novel idea that I'm saying, but it does feel like the way that the one of the pieces of magic that the LLMs did was this notion of introducing a chat, like really making a chatbot really actually a viable thing. And I mean, we've had chatbots, one of the earliest computer programs, Liza or whatever, was this notion of this really primitive chatbot. But they're just so much richer now with the power of LLMs. And so it's really it's a fun story, Justin, and it makes sense that you've been this you had a use case that was really appropriate
Yeah.
and on target, and you've run with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking that notion of CRM, customer relationship management, to a new level, to really the AI, to the LLM, the AI level, right? And I mean, I'm listening to this and thinking about this is going to be the table stakes for everybody, right?
Yeah, and presumably that's the idea, right? Like, is that where you're at now? Is it's more than just the platform for Mountjoy? Are you kind of taking this to the next level to take it to other hospitality providers like my local dentist?
I mean, if we can't get your local dentist, then there's no business here at all. But I believe that in the future, everyone will be having text message interactions with companies. They're not going to be looking up like a customer service number on a website and hoping that they can reach a human being. That's not, people don't enjoy that. But we've proven with the Mountjoy model, people do text and they like to do it. and not just for complaints. So yeah, the idea here is, we've been working with some potential early partners that aren't restaurants, by the way, like a professional sports team,
Yeah.
and other restaurants as well.
Yeah,
But
obviously it's like Scott said, this is like customer relationship management. Everybody's got a customer wants to engage that and grow that relationship. Makes a ton of
yeah,
sense. I
yeah,
love it. That's very cool.
Can I ask a
thank
can I
you.
ask a different question? Kind of a different topic, Justin.
Yeah, I love it.
You mentioned you had, an iOS app, an Android app. It sounds like there's some stuff for the kitchen, a point of sale system, all these different parts. And I was thinking about two different things, and I'm just curious if you would share about them. The first was, is that all a monolith? Like, is it one big system, or what is
I
it?
knew
And
I knew Scott was gonna go here. I actually wanted to ask a very similar question. So
and
go,
and
Scott,
then the
go.
other
This is great.
was, at the beginning when it was just you, and there were all these different parts that had to get done. I'm just wondering, and this is a little bit for, maybe other people who are listening who are thinking, I want to start my own thing. Like, how did you tackle that problem? Because it could have, I would imagine, maybe perhaps it felt a little overwhelming. And I'm wondering just how you tackled that problem. So those are kind of the two thoughts I had about this, or questions I had about this.
And I want to throw a little bit of flavor. Let me throw a little bit of a sauce on top of
Paprika, if you will.
little paprika on top of Scott's question. One of the things that we often run into as engineering leaders is sort of like dealing with the decisions of yesteryear. And so Scott's asking the monolith question, but I'm kind of curious, Justin, along Scott's line of questioning, how are you making sure that you're not digging yourself into a hole for the future?
I mean, the honest answer is I'm not. Like nobody is. What you just said doesn't change. It's an endless cycle of people making decisions and then new people coming in and hating on those decisions. And maybe that's the way it should be. But I can tell you the decisions that I made, and I can tell you why I made them. The I think for context, the thing that I was working on right before I started this was the 98.6 code base, and I remember my first day there. And let me start by saying I have tons of respect for everyone I worked with there, and uh, and it will be very easy for someone in the future to come and say the same thing about my code base as I'm about to say about this one. 100%. But you remember the things that were hard, right? Like I remember my first day. I was given the GitHub repo to clone and told, let's start getting familiar, build the project. First, it was hard for me to clone the repo because I didn't have the right, token. Like even just these small administrative things that people, take for granted because you just do them. They're not easy. They're not easy steps, even for a season that like it takes time. So it took me time to figure out how to get the repo onto my computer. And then it took me the first several days to get the project. I was an iOS engineer then, to get the iOS app to build in Xcode. There were all these dependencies and all these things that were, they were done in the name of efficiency and code safety and formatting and all that stuff, right? But it took a ton of time just to get all these dependencies to work in the environment that was my work computer. And so I remember looking back at that when I started this, thinking, I don't know what the trade-off exactly will be from this, but what I want to have be the result is that when we bring on our first new engineer, it takes them 30 seconds to start building and running and working in our 30 seconds. If it takes longer than that, then that's the failure of the setup. And as a result, I, the short answer to your question, is it a monolith? Is yes. I am a huge fan.
So, Justin, you love a monolith?
Yeah, I love a monolith because if you separate things, then they drift apart. And a monolith is I guess it's a pattern really that enforces keeping things moving as one ship. It is easier for me to preach the benefits of a monolith as a one-person team. I don't have anyone complaining about the potential pain points associated with having a monolith. Maybe I don't. I guess most of the people who listen to this know what a monolith is, but I'll just add some color to this. At least in my case, a monolith is having all of the projects, all of the code bases for the Mount Joy ecosystem in one GitHub repo. That's what I'm talking about, at least. And at the beginning, there were two priorities that I was talking about. One of them was I wanted it to be super easy for the next person who comes to start. Whether or not they like the code that they see was another question, but I wanted them to be able to jump in easily. And I think that one is still the case. Whoever else looks at this code can still use it.
Hey, Justin, can I ask a kind of like a nerdy, like in the weeds type technical
Please, yeah,
question for you?
yeah. I never get
But
to
like
talk about this.
clearly you have like you've got your app, you've got your mobile apps, and you've got this back end service that's doing something, and then you've got this other app, which is this point of sale app. So you definitely have different components to it. It makes sense that you are in a mono repo. That makes a ton of sense. But how do you how are you solving the problem of like essentially component compatibility, right? Since you're not able to, you obviously can't like snap your finger and get your latest iOS app version released, like because of the nature of Apple and its guards that it's got up. So I'm just kind of curious, like as far as like thinking of it like a monolith versus thinking of it as at least these components that have to interact with each other in a logical way. I'm just kind of curious, like what's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I don't do that many releases of our guest app. In fact, I had very high aspirations for what the guest ordering experience on a phone would be. Um, and had lots of like crazy thoughts about the way it would work, how we would change the landscape for that. And I think the sad truth, I don't know if it's sad, it is the truth though, is people don't want to download a restaurant app. Like people want a couple social media apps on their phone and then a couple utilities, and that's all they want when it comes to apps. And so people would rather use the tablets that we put in the store. The upshot of that is I don't have any delay on releases. In fact, I built out this a deployment system that lets me I can make a code change right now, and in 10 seconds, 25 tablets, 8 Apple TVs, 4 Macs, this whole ecosystem of basically iOS, Mac OS, and TV OS products all update with the same thing. Which brings me to the other decision that I made that was related to this monolith. One code base within the monolith to the extent possible. Obviously, I did not make the trade-off on like a React Native kind of thing to do Android. So Android is its special flower in the code base to some extent. But beyond that, there are only two code bases. There's one that has everything. Like on my phone, I can open the same screen that is running the TV that has the leaderboard on it that I told you about, because it's all the same app, which means that I'm sharing all the same code across the entire thing. There's never a single thing that's duplicated, whether it's like a design asset or a functionality of some sort. And what's cool about that is I told you we send like a text message with this game, right? Every morning. It's the same code that lets me program the game in our iOS app that generates the puzzle that goes out on our backend. So like there's just this incredible, as I've said, I love these synergies that you get from having one thing. And not only do you get them when you have one platform in a restaurant between like the back of house and front of house and customers and all that, but you definitely get huge gains in my experience by doing it this way as a developer. And so the only two code bases that I really work in for like if I named all of the targets that we build products for at the restaurant, you'd be surprised at like the quantity. It's like there's a target that does QR code scanning for our just for that for like we have this is actually sort of cool. We have a camera that sits above the counter where the expo person, the person who's, the last line before a customer gets an order, is working. And if they slide a tray that has the receipt on it under this counter in a certain zone, it automatically marks the order is ready. So it's sort of like, it's sort of like a sliding something past the grocery checkout, but just it's in the air. So like they don't have to think about it. And there's a whole app just for that, but it's part of the same staff-based app target. And so it's made it very efficient to make changes. And anytime I change something, the benefits of one change actually are benefits to other parts of the app rather than potential pain points or bug that would surface. There's a lot of tech debt too. I don't want to like paint any like overly miraculous pictures of what I have. I think the biggest tech debt that you would see if you looked at my code base is just the result of laziness and going fast. And I would say that's particularly true in the back end. So the entire back end stack is serverless. I made a decision at the very beginning that this is the way that this code base can grow alongside clients without breaking all the time, and with the ability to scale infinitely, and me not having to learn how to do that with like a machine. And so the entire code base is a bunch of lambdas, and honestly, the thing I'm most proud of, and I'll stop after this, of all of the things that I've done. It's just funny. I never get to talk about this. There's no one else on my team who has any interest in what we're discussing here. But when I make a change, I press a button, and if I'm really confident about that change, I press a different button, and it promotes it to all three environments at the same time. Which I honestly I do that sometimes because I'm a bit of a cowboy. But when I press that button, it commits the change that I made to the repo, and then a GitHub action runs. And the GitHub action, when it's done, and it takes it about 10 minutes to finish, it deploys every single thing that we have, every single place. Like if you were watching on the surveillance cameras at our restaurants, you'd see 25 different screens all update one after the other. You would see, if you look at our AWS dashboard, the entire backend redeploys. Even the things that weren't changed, we'd redeploy the entire CDK template with each deploy, and all the logic is in there. So there's nothing to there's no questions to ask. Like, I redeployed my services. Should I go check the server? Either the server was working or it wasn't. But these deployments aren't changing infrastructure anymore. I'm just adding business logic at this point. And so it's incredibly powerful, and it's made me wonder why everyone doesn't use serverless for everything. But that's the pattern, to answer your question, and I've been pretty happy with it.
Wait a second. How is the serverless tech debt?
The serverless right. I did bring it up in that context. I think that there's two ways that it's tech debt. The main way is that I am probably a shitty backend architect. This was my first backend that I've worked on, and I chose an architecture that I also was completely unfamiliar with, but liked the bullet points on. And so if you look at the way that it's built, like there are things that I know that are wrong that I've just decided are acceptable. Whereas in the iOS code base, there's no duplicated code. If you actually went on our AWS dashboard and looked at the code inside of the Lambdas, for example, that run, you would vomit. It's just like the same huge chunks, because I'm like importing a method from here, there, and I'm not using Lambda layers to do it, and all these things that like are the right patterns if all you do is backend and serverless, and that's the way you do it. I have not done those things, and they're not that hard to do. I just haven't done them. So there's a lot of debt.
Well, the other thing, Justin, you said that we kind of blew by, which I think is the most astute thing we might have had on this entire podcast. We're on about episode 15 now, I think. Isn't that right, Brad? 16, 17,
No
18, something
way.
like that. You said tech debt is the result. Well, actually, before I say this, we're always looking, as an industry, we're always trying to find a definition for tech debt, right? What is tech debt? What is tech debt? You said tech debt is the result of laziness and speed. I think, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Tech debt, that's it. Tech debt, that's it. That's all it is. It's the negative results of laziness and speed. Is that what tech debt is?
I think so. I mean, it's intentional laziness. It's not like you're just accidentally lazy, but like you want to go fast, and so you know that you could go slower
No, some
and do
people are
something with a pattern, but
just lazy. They just don't want to take the time to do it.
yeah, that's true. That's true. It can be that too.
Laziness and speed.
You know, it's funny, Justin. There's a part of this story where I'm like, I I mean, I'm super bullish on AI assisted coding, and I think that there are going to be more and more businesses that are essentially like one developer that knows what they want and um, just builds their own version. So there's a part of the story of this platform that it's kind of the time in that it's possible because of the time, not only because of the sort of like engagement that you talk about being very much dependent on LLMs, but there's this other part of like you saying yourself that like you're so much faster um, in this environment by yourself, cowboy up, coding with you and your Claude Code, co-pilot, co-worker, and you're unencumbered. I think we're going to hear more and more and more of this.
I have an insight about that to add to that, Brad, that I've been
Yeah.
actually thinking about for this whole call. The insight is that Justin is also the product manager. That he has the talent
Yeah.
to he had both the vision and the talent to be the product manager and the engineer. And I was thinking back earlier, Justin made this comment about how, well, when teams get bigger, they get slower. It's just how it is. And I was thinking about, as we were talking, I was just kind of thinking that is true, but why is it that way? And one of the thoughts that came to my mind as I was thinking about it earlier was, is it that they get slower because there's more engineers, or do they get slower because there's more product managers? And I think I don't know if it's one or the other, but what I think the combination of it is like there's a tremendous expense of trying to understand what some other person wants you to do,
Wants.
That's
right?
it. That's
That's
it.
it's just I don't know how. And then when you multiply that to say many product managers and many engineers, and it probably becomes like a exponential complexity there in terms of getting everybody to agree on what we all want and what we all want to do. And I think maybe that's where some of the slowness comes from. And Justin has the vision and the talent to be that person together.
Yeah, 100%. That's got to be it. That's got to be it. I mean, I just think about like all the teams I've been on, and even the team I'm on right now, which we're super small, and we only have one product owner. But just getting everybody to agree what it says on the card. Like what? Wait, what's this? What's this mean exactly? And it's like it's you literally. It's like the word. Like we can spend all this time and energy trying to make those words right, and that's all wasted time because for Justin, it's like he has the idea, he knows what it is. He doesn't need to explain it to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and he just gets to build it.
Highest fidelity communication, just right in your own brain.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to offer a counterpoint to all that, thank you for the kind things you're saying. But it's I do believe that like the best things are built by groups of people coming together. And I think that there is a good question to be asked and answered that Scott was going at before, which is, is it necessary that they get so much slower as they grow? And I think you absolutely hit on the reason they're slow is because as the distance between the idea and the way that you execute that idea grows, processes come in and take time, and that's what it is. But I think if there's any sort of insight that is translatable beyond sort of my weird situation, because this is obviously not the norm at most companies. Um, I think it's that, like for me, coding has always been the toll that I've had to pay to build things. I'm not actually I'm so happy to be here, but I'm really not like at heart a technical coding kind of guy. I've figured out how to do it, and I enjoy doing it, by the way, but I've figured out how to do it because I have things I want to make. and it's the things that I want to make that are who I am. So I really am like a product person in a lot of ways, trapped in the situation where no one else is going to do it if I don't do it. But I think the answer to the velocity problem as you get bigger is, number one, don't get that much bigger, especially today. It doesn't make, to me, uh, I had this idea that the optimal size for a product and engineering organization, first of all, which I think should be the same thing, um, is 5 to 10 people. And I think 5 to 10 people can probably do a faster and better job, if they're the right people, than big companies with big
Wait,
product and
do you
engineering
mean
teams.
a 2-pizza team?
Yeah, I would say so. Like or a 2 chicken sandwich operation. Yeah, it's like the smaller you are with the things that you need, and the only things I think you really need as time goes on are the right ideas, people who are like attuned to, the market and know how to sort of steer a product in the right direction. Um, and some product managers are that, and some of them aren't. If you can find somebody who's that and has, some idea of how to make the thing, that person is is a person that can do the job of a product person embedded in an engineering team much faster. And so I think if the tech company of the future, there's going to be a much higher value on the people who have the ability to come up with the creative ideas, I think, because the stakes in terms of building those things is going to come down, and it's already lower now than it was. So yeah, it's what I've been looking forward to for my whole life, because it's always been hard for me to put things in my head into the world. It just I can't do most of them. I have that list. The restaurant thing, I was lucky to have a year to work on, but there's lots of other ideas in that list. And so yeah, if you're interviewing for new candidates, I think you might want to spend less time on algorithms and more time on having them sort of spill their process on how they think about a product evolving. Because yeah, if you have to sit there explaining, well, this is the card design and it's got a corner radius on each side, like that's got to be a waste of time at this point, right?
Mm-hmm. And very interesting. Okay, so Justin, we have to end on this one last question.
Okay.
You said earlier you reported to both Brad and I. Now tell us, why was Brad a better person to report to than me?
Oh, Scott, what a humble question you've just asked. And that's the reason you are the number one, Scott. No, you guys were both great. Like, I'll say this. I learned a lot from both of you in different ways. And you guys could not have been more different managers. And I will give a 30-second quip about both of you.
Oh, great.
All right.
Brad, and these were both things that happened at the very end, like before either you guys left or I left. Brad, toward the very end of my tenure at 98.6, I came in to our one-on-one and I said, but Brad, I can rebuild the whole iOS app. Just give me a week. And like I was so excited because we just like learned about Swift UI, and I was like, it's gonna be so great. And as I said the words, I was like, I'm looking forward to hearing why this is not going to be something he's going to let me do. And I remember his answer was, okay, try. And I remember at that moment thinking, like, this could be a horrible decision. Like, this is what I need to be checked on by a manager. But I also remember feeling like a certain kinship, like this person just clearly knows who I am, and they know that like this could be a roll of the dice that has absolutely no value in the last months that I'm spending at this company. But it taught me something about, I think, risk taking and really knowing your customer. Like it's very difficult to be a good manager if you don't know the way that person works and how to get the most out of them. And so I thought about that. I've thought about that a number of times. And
Well, I
Scott,
think you're telling that story in a manner that makes me look pretty good. So, thank you.
it is good. It is good. Because I don't think you did that in the same way with other. Like I think you played to other people's strengths as well. So it was like the restaurant is, personalizing a service. So with you and Scott, it was longer ago, but this was your last day on the job at 98.6, and I was reporting to you at that time. And we had a one-on-one of the books, and unlike Robbie, who cut and run before our one-on-one, you were still on the books for that day at our one-on-one, and you came. And I expected, us to be like just having a friendly goodbye and being like, thanks for, being a good collaborator and manager and all that. You didn't have any time for that. You sat down and you opened a spreadsheet. And at the time, I'd been concerned that a project that I was working on at 98.6 as a principal engineer at the time wasn't going to get resourced in any way beyond me. And I was very stressed out about that. And you had put together a spreadsheet that had specific numbers. This was your last half an hour on this job. Like, you may as well have been gone. And you put together the spreadsheet and you talked me through how the numbers worked and how to present those numbers to other stakeholders, because they painted this picture that showed that the delta with the system I was working on saved, X number of hours. And it was a very impressive picture that you painted. And I was just, I don't know exactly what like the nugget of wisdom is here, but there was something very powerful about somebody just being absolutely there until the very last minute. And I think about that quite a bit too. So you both were great.
I appreciate that. Can you remind me the name? I remember visually that system you were working on, but I can't remember the name of it.
It was
What did we call it?
Flow. I think it was Flow.
Flow.
Flow Writer.
Yeah, Flow Writer.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right. And
Yeah.
and it got resourced after that. I don't know how much of it was
Yeah.
the spreadsheet, but it certainly didn't hurt.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, this was a super fun conversation, Justin. It was great to reconnect with you. Loved hearing everything all the cool, exciting stuff you've been doing. And thanks a lot, man. I really enjoyed this time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
This was super fun. I'm gonna go get a chicken sandwich now.
Yeah, you should. Have fun.
All right. Thanks a lot, Justin.
This episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was edited by Saffron Hefta-Gaub. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at How Many CTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at howmanyctospod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.